Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 8 of the Just an Excuse podcast, where the name is the game and the game is TTRP and it's all the characters in between. I'm your host and the one with the need for the excuse. My name is Miguel Bloomberg, and I'm happy to have you back at my table. I'm glad you're here. With me today is yet another individual and campaign character in the long-running campaign known as the Ashes of Empire. I've had the pleasure of interviewing, I believe, 3 out of 5? No, technically 4 out of 5, since I myself was interviewed. So 4 out of 5 of all of the campaign characters thus far. And I've also interviewed the DM, and that was a really cool opportunity to do, and I really glad I got a chance to. I'm glad I got to pick his brain. But there was 2 people I had yet to speak to by this point, and one of which has finally decided to join me today. His name is Brook, and I'm very happy to have him on. Brook, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. A lot better now that everything's sort of wrapping up. It's nice, you know? It's nice.
Mm-hmm.
This campaign, everything we've managed to do with it, I'm really proud of how I've gotten, how everyone's gotten so far. It's nice. I'm feeling nice.
Yeah, it does feel good to get this far in a campaign. For those who don't know or maybe listening to it who are a little out of the loop, the Ashes of Empire campaign is a campaign we started when, I was still in college at that point. I think we started this campaign in late 2022, and we're looking to wrap it up in basically midway through 2025, so pretty much 3 years worth of campaign, just shy of 100 sessions right now. I think we're at 96, probably at 97, 98, so it's really cool. And it's also really cool for me because this is, technically speaking, my 3rd ever campaign. I started this campaign a D&D newbie, and I will finish it. I don't want to say well-versed in the game, but it definitely feels like we've come a long way. But in either case, we'll talk about a little bit more of that when we get later in the show. For now, we have a character to talk about. And that character we have a chance to talk about today is the wonderful, the lightning fast, the doctor of the party. A witch doctor, maybe. But his name is Reverie. Please enjoy the following audio show.
The job had gone south fast. Mirabel May had wanted quiet. 3 passengers board a night train, blend in long enough to find the ranking man, claim his bounty, and relieve him of a strong box full of payroll money if they were lucky. Instead, somebody recognized Silas Shepard halfway to the next station. Now, half the Devarian Express was hiding under their seats. They knew what came next. It was a gunfight. Still got movement ahead. Well now, ain't that discouraging? How many shots left? I got 3 rounds and a personality. That's all? I've been contributing poorly. Well, how many you got left? Not enough. So we're short on ammunition and assets. Wonderful. I'm just saying, why don't you tag in Red Eye? He ain't earned Red Eye yet. Reverie red-eyed Revel worked his rifle slow and steady from behind an overturned bench seat. He was new blood, with a downright quiet disposition by comparison to most. A dragon born with green scales and a habit of watching people a little too closely. Mirabel hadn't decided if she trusted him yet. But Silas was right. They were out of options. Reverie? Yeah. You got an angle or not? I might. Then take it. And here I thought I was low man on this one. Reverie usually kept things short, but every now and then something dry slipped through. Not friendly exactly, just enough confidence to let people know he wasn't nervous. That bothered Mirabel more than if he'd bragged. Reverie pulled a small injector from inside his coat and pressed it against his arm, some homemade stimulant from his alchemist days. Nobody knew exactly what was in it. One day that poison's gonna stop your heart. It might. But I doubt that's today. Cover me. Damn! Mirabel knew the story, at least the version Reverie told. Alchemy ran in the family. Good people. He never explained it further, and Mirabel could fill in the gaps. Figured it was enough to drive a man to this life, maybe even make him bitter. Instead, Reverie seemed to enjoy this work a little too much for it to be that simple. If you fall off this train, I ain't stopping for you. Wouldn't ask you to. Ahead and downwind, the rival lieutenant leaned from the connector between cars, shouting orders while his men kept firing blind into the passenger car behind them. Reverie planted his feet, standing tall against the wind and ready the rifle to his shoulder. Slow breath in, slow breath out. Hey! Rifle! Down! Everybody down! Keep firing, you motherfucker! Retreat! Retreat! Woo-wee! Billot's not gonna believe this when I tell him, right, May? That kid's really starting to get on my nerves.
Okay, well, I'm glad that came out as well as it did, and I hope you all had a chance to enjoy it. But with that out of the way, we're gonna move straight into the questions, straight into the nitty-gritty. Brook, I got some questions for you. We'll start off with the easy ones. What inspired this character?
The simple answer to that is Hunt Showdown. I was playing a lot of that game back in summer of 2022. Still do play on and off. And funnily enough, at the time, I wasn't actually planning on joining a campaign very much, but I was sort of getting into that vibe. I was sort of getting into the Louisiana gunslinging Southern, that sort of thing. And then Fen approaches me and he's like, "Hey, I'm adding guns to D&D," and I was like, "You son of a bitch, I'm in."
Yeah, that's all you needed to hear, huh?
Yes. But it was a bit longer, but that's pretty much the only important part of that conversation.
Before we go any further, one of these days I'm going to remember to do this question first. Could you give us a very brief elevator pitch on Reverie? Maybe a couple themes, but just what does this character look like? You see him on the street, what is he? Give us the real quick elevator pitch just to put a vision in our listeners' minds.
Oh, you mean appearance-wise, or do you mean general character-wise?
Appearance,
okay.
General characteristics, what have you. Whatever you think's most important.
So Reverie is a Green Dragonborn. He's a tried and true gunslinger. Everything you'd expect from that big black Stetson, gray, sort of greenish clothes sort of theme. He's got 2 guns on his belt. He's got a rifle over his shoulder. He's got riding boots. He's everything you'd expect from a typical gunslinging Western. And he's a mercenary for hire. He's sort of a ex-gang member now wandering, or at the beginning of the campaign, rather, wandering, sell gun, sell sword, however you will.
Jeez, it feels like forever ago, huh?
It really does. I remember starting the campaign without much of a direction, and we've gotten so far that I'm looking at my notes for the original character, and it feels like a completely different person.
Yeah, I feel a lot of that that disconnect of geez, how far has this character come, especially with Audia. But not this episode for her. I've already done her. Let's focus on Reverie now. So you say Hunt Showdown inspired the character. Did I can see how Hunt Showdown definitely inspired the aesthetic of the character. That's very it was very apparent. Gunslinging game, you made a gunslinger. I got that. Love that. Did it also give anything else? Did it give character traits? It seems like it also, for those of you who know Hunt Showdown, I have played a little bit of it. It leans into, it's more than just a gunslinging game. It leans into that sort of Southern mythology cryptid stories, kind of down in the bayou where there are these sort of this swampy monster things, and there's this sort of witchcraft, witch doctor energy to it. And I think Reverie picked up some of that as well. He kind of becomes this witch doctor character, at least later in the campaign. But I'm curious if Hunt Showdown informed anything like character-wise for Reverie.
I mean, he's sort of a melting pot. I think the general, like, description of him, the general, like, the clothes that he wears, the way he presents himself, the, like, aesthetic of his firearms, that's, like, all Hunt Showdown. I'm not gonna lie, that's, like, 100% just sort of like it's just that. But in terms of, like, mannerisms, he's sort of a melting pot of, like, other media, I guess, that inspired him. Things like Tombstone, Bastion, like, pretty much anything you'd expect and, like, see as, like, typical gunslinging Western energy. I sort of just put it all into a pot, and out came Reverie.
All right, cool. I can't hate a gunslinger cliche. You know, it's a classic. I think I've said in other episodes, cliches are kind of like the familiar grip on the sword, right? Every sword has its own differences and balancing, but in the end, everyone knows where to put their hands, and I like that about cliches. It's all about where it goes from there, and I think Reverie is definitely a perfect example of how to take a concept from its seedling ideas and really grow it into a character. But to keep this question moving, do you see any of yourself in this character at all? Like, I've noticed that, when I make, and I didn't believe this when I first started making, honestly, when I first made Adia, I found that there are little bits and pieces that of myself that kind of leak into character creation, so that when I look back, I go like, oh, there's a little bit of me in there. It's a little bit of this and that. That's kind of, one thing is exaggerated more than the other, but I find it leaks very deliberately. Do you find that at all? Do you think there's a little bit of you in there somewhere?
I think it's mostly the aesthetic that's similar. In terms of, like, a character, I think we're, like, pretty different. Like, actual backstory / personality, there's probably not a lot of similarity there, but, like, Reverie did kind of come from my interests as a person, at least at the time, still kind of to this day. And I sort of leaned into that with the character. He wasn't just like a cowboy. He was a self-aware cowboy, and he liked it. And I think that's probably where most of the similarity comes, is like the aesthetics that brought Reverie a life are aesthetics that Reverie is, like, in universe aware of, if that makes any sense. And I think that is sort of what bridges that connection.
Self-aware cowboy. What do you mean by self-aware? Like, he's aware of, like, his situation? Could you expand on that?
Well, it's like, I don't know how long the quote-unquote, like, cowboy era of, like, real history was, but in the setting that it came from, Tavar, it's been, like, centuries going. Like, the naming convention, the culture, the dueling, like, the clothes, it's like people there are, like, in on the bit. It's like how it's a culture. It's like how people present themselves, but it's a long time going. So Reverie is not just sort of like a cowboy because he, like, is wearing the clothes of the region and, like, picking up and slinging the gun. He, like, sought that out. It's like it's something that really interests him. The same way it interests me, the aesthetic. It, like, he was drawn to it.
Mm-hmm. So,
if that makes any sense.
Well, I think it does. It speaks to, I think you said it in the beginning, which is that this isn't, like late stage cowboyism, if that makes any sense, right? Like, there's the stories of the guys who actually went out there, and I'm talking about actual history now. There's the stories of the guys who actually went out there. They were settlers and explorers, and they built these towns, and it was lawless, and it gave birth to the cowboy just naturally. So there was that generation of them where they were, like, natural. But then eventually after that, many of the stories around that place and time were about, like, there were the actual outlaws, and there were the people who saw that life as desirable, and they actually pursued that aesthetic. They pursued that lifestyle, and so you get that sort of disconnect between, like, the original generation who became that out of necessity, and the second generation who comes along and pursues it just because they think it's, I don't know, maybe because it looks cool or whatever. But I see that same story, I think, if I'm understanding it, in this setting, because in Tavar, it's been cowboyism for forever. And so people aren't just doing this because it's, like what the society like inherently naturally forces them to become. Maybe it was that way in the beginning, but now you have a society of people actively pursuing that lifestyle, pursuing that aesthetic. And that sounds like what you're pitching to me. And if I am understanding it incorrectly, correct me. But I like the way that sounds. Like I like that sort of, like you said, self-awareness of being like, this isn't just a hard-boiled mercenary who's just like, I had to become this way. He was like, no, I grew up in this culture and I'm pursuing it. If that makes sense.
No, yeah, that's exactly it. It's like he wasn't a mercenary because like a dragon came and like burned his town down or anything.
Mm-hmm.
He was a mercenary because like everyone else in the culture is like a mercenary, and there's the sort of like
it's just
kid,
what
you're
you
gonna
do.
go out when you're 16, you're gonna shoot people, and you're gonna die when you're 22. And Reverie was like, I want to do that.
I'm in.
And that's sort of like I'm him.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yeah, I like that. I like that sort of twist on it, because most D&D characters wind up coming out the oven with this like call to action that's normally some horrendous thing that happened to them. But it's cool to play with a character who is just a product of environment, and that environment not just being abjectly negative. It's cool to have a character that isn't just like, I grew up in misery. It's just like, no, it's just, we grew up and this is what we did, Yeah.
And it helps that Ashes is the sort of campaign that like there's been time for the dust to like settle and for things to be normalized. So I can pick a character and I can go like, I want this to be a character who grew up in like a recent tragedy, or I could pick up a character and go like, actually, I want to pick up a character who's just raring and going. Like there are just people that are perfectly normal lifestyles, just ready to go adventuring because that's just what the setting is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of what tied Reverie, I think, so well to the campaign.
Yeah, it's one of the things I like the most about Ashes, to get slightly off topic for a second, which was that the setting felt incredibly, and it might just be my nostalgia talking because we've been sitting in the same sand for 3 years, but it really did feel like a place that was burnt in. Right? It felt like it felt old, if that makes sense. So that when you're walking, it's not like, a lot of the times when people make campaigns, and I've done this myself, campaigns can feel awful, like, really well polished and shiny. They can feel like you're kind of walking on glass or porcelain. They're just this shiny thing the DM made for you. But Fenn did this really well, where he made the world feel like, even at the beginning, the world definitely was new, it was novel to us, but it didn't feel like we were walking through some place that was made just for us however many months ago. It felt like, even at the beginning, it felt like it was a place that had existed for a long time. And I think that's a testament to the way he pitched it. I don't know how you feel about that, but I really appreciated the way that felt.
It was a world that felt like lived in and like active. And it's like, we're not the hero generation that's going to go out for the first time and break the mold. It's like, we're this generation's iteration of heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think that's what ties Reverie so well to the campaign. Is like, there's whole generations of people in Tavar who are like, I'm going to be the next big hero. And Reverie doing that is like interesting and fun from a narrative point, but from his backstory and his perspective, like, everyone's like that. That's just a Tavarian. That's just normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're gonna come back to this because it's touching on some really cool topics, but this is really cool, and I'm glad we agree. A little bit back to the creation side. Did you have any goals behind this character when you made him? I know you talked about he was pretty. He's a pretty well packaged package. He came very well prepared. What am I trying to say here? When I made audio, I built her in a way where I was like, she's gonna have these problems, and it's because of this thing that happened to her that she has these problems, and by the end of the story, I want her to answer these problems in a certain way. With Reverie, since we've talked about how his call to action was not some horrendous backstory, he just grew up in a culture and is executing that culture. Did he have goals behind him? And how did you set those up if it wasn't because some dragon burned his house down, for example? How did you do that, if you did it at all? Did you have an arc in mind?
I had like a backstory. God, I'm gonna out myself here because I think it's funny. I had an arc in mind, or rather, like a hook in mind, which was Reverie's parents, because in like lore, there's these two big dragons, and they both like sort of have spats against each other, and one of the spats led to Reverie's family when he was gone being kidnapped, and then he has to like pay a ransom to bail them out, and that's like the hook of the character. Did I have an arc in mind? No, because that wasn't actually supposed to be his backstory. I ran out of time.
You ran out of time?
It was a placeholder, and I ran out of time. so
you just went, yeah, screw it. We'll stick
went,
with
"Fuck
this.
I knew I wanted him to have a sister, because back when we were doing D&D and I was like a full marshal, I was like, it would be kind of cool if, like, this is bird walking, and if I ever answer a question in this without bird walking, you know that somebody has come in and they're not the real me, because I'm just going to keep doing it. But way back in like other campaigns I played for a lot of DMs that, in the nicest way possible, they wanted to have a body count, and I got very used to playing characters that were like character and presentation and vibe first, backstory second.
Well, like you just wanted them to be like they just had to be quick and ready?
No, not that they had to be quick, more that like backstory wasn't as important to the DM, and while I liked backstory sort of rounding out the character's psych profile, there were times where like I would make a character that was very backstory intensive, and like, I have this goal, I have this thing I want to do in the world, and they would die, and it would be like, well, that sucks.
So that is what body count means. It's you had DMs with a kill streak.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And like, I got used to making like sort of short, snippy, this connects the character to the plot backstories, and like, I was fine with it. When Reverie rolled around, I forgot that Fen didn't do that. So I had like a placeholder backstory, and he kept talking to me, and he was like, I'm not gonna kill your character. You can come up with an elaborate thing. And I was like, it'll be fine, I have so much time. I did not, because I was also getting into college at the time. So we sort of touched into it, and I was like, fuck it, I'll roll with this. And honestly, looking back on it, it's not like the most creative thing I could have gone with, but as a character, I like what it brought to him in like the early game, you know? Like, he very much had this way about money, I think, that was like kind of an interesting character trait, because like, you know, a lot about the like greedy mercenary always looking for his cut, and like, I kind of lean into that, but there was like a reason behind it, you know? I could sort of play off that stereotype, and I didn't mean for that to go in and be written in stone, but I do like what I was able to do with it.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think it was the early personality composition of the party. I think Reverie was a really good addition, because without him, is Vince, Kepri, Adia, if I'm going to look at the poster and see if I'm right, and Craftworm. Excuse me, it's Craftworm. And I
forget the boss.
Yeah, I can't forget the boss. And between that four, the closest thing to, I guess, a straight man was Vince, because Craftworm was very him, and Kepri and Adia were obviously their own special type of oddballs. And Vince was a good straight man for just to kind of be a backbone, but he was a very rigid character type, which is fine. But I like the way Reverie came around, and he had a flexible sort of no-nonsense drive to him that I think balanced it out. So it wasn't just three kooky characters and one straight man. It was kind of two straights and three kookies, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like it evened out the party, and it brought a really more easy dynamic between everybody. And I think it played off really well, especially as we got later into the game.
No, I agree. It's always a joy role-playing a character with a migraine brought about by the party. And I mean that in the most genuine way possible, because it's like, both from my perspective sometimes and Reverie's perspective, I get to express my out of character, what the hell is going on in character, and that's always fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of like the greater dynamic, I agree. I like the way we sort of balanced out the 3 and the 2, and how like personality types were able to bounce off each other very easily. I think instead of having like 4 cookies and 1 straight man, which was what I was planning on doing, but I changed, and I'm very grateful for that.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to originally make Reverie a lot more unhinged, and I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I liked a lot about Reverie, especially as we got deeper into the game. I think you touched on it a little bit. Like he like the kind of the cliche of like the mercenary constantly looking for his cut. And one of the things I liked about Reverie that kind of played into the subversion of the cowboy trope, which is that, it talked about, I imagine the original cowboys were these incredibly vicious characters, right? They were effectively criminals. That's where the origin of a cowboy comes from. They were criminals most of the time. And they were outlaws, and they were gunslingers, and there were these like kill everyone, trust no one, take all the money type characters very often. And then you had the second wave, which was just like these sort of like ankle biter, like we just want to be like them, but it's like that kind of frustrating like wannabe gangster type, which is even somehow more irritating. But one of the things I loved about Reverie's archetype is he really did feel like a character who grew up in a culture that idolized those things and then pursued those things not because he was malicious, but because that's just what you do. Like that's how it works. Like there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting your cut. But Reverie was never the character to like draw his gun when he felt like he was being treated unfairly. He just was like, hey, I want my cut. I feel like that's fair to me. Like it never felt like Reverie came from a place of malice unless someone really deserved it. And I liked the way that played with Reverie's character, and I liked the way it kind of illustrated the sort of, I don't want to say, I don't know if noble cowboy is the right way to say it, but it felt like there was a lot of nobility in what he was doing, and he kind of was a great representation of the values of Tavar in a way. So it's funny he wound up becoming a senator, because then later in the campaign we got to see Tavarian values perverted. When we fought the robot dogs and the guy with the brain in the jar, we got to see both sides of that, which was a really cool way to sort of contrast what Reverie and what Tavar can make of people, but then what he's not.
I definitely have to give props to the party for that as well, because like the way I originally had it written up and the way he sort of was in the very beginning, Reverie was a more like detached character. He didn't see himself as a member of the group. He saw himself as like a replaceable mercenary, and he sort of act like it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had sort of a problem of like slacking off when he could. But like he had an opportunity to be more stingy. He had an opportunity to be like a more aggressive, like straight man, I guess. But the party was always willing to sort of like aid him and work with him. And I think that made him also willing to work with them. And I think like in a cyclical way over time, he sort of fell into the party over a course of like a few sessions. And I'm really glad that's the direction the character took, because it was really enjoyable. I really do like that dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Quick side tangent before we continue this. Where did you get the name? I myself am a habitual random on the name generator. So where did you get Reverie from? And you've already fascinated me with this, with how we were late to turn in our backstory assignment. So tell me where this character name came from.
So at 1 in every 3 questions you ask is going to be some dumb shit, and I apologize in advance for that. But so he was originally going to be named Jedediah, because I was leaning really heavily into like the Tombstone vibe, and like I really wanted to go that angle.
Jedediah, hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, it was gonna be Jedediah Red Eye Reverie, and I was gonna go all into it, and then Fen hit me with the Tavarians use alliteration names, change it, and I was like, well, Bam. And so his last name became his first. So Reverie, Red Eye, and then Revel just sort of fell into place. I don't think I randomly generated that. I think Revel was sort of just like me. Sometimes I'll sort of just scratch away at like sounds back and forth, and then that'll just make that into a name. I don't know if that's a good way of doing it, but it's what I've always done.
Hey, it gets us there. I mean, in the end of the day, it's it's like naming a dog. It's crunchy in the beginning, but after like a couple days, it's like, yeah, that's just their name. Like I couldn't imagine them being any other name at that point.
Yeah, and better thing with Reverie too, because I think that is a much more like fantasy name. It's like I was kind of just gonna give him a normal ass name, and in retrospect, glad I did.
Well, I think it also kind of it speaks. There's a little bit of poetry to it, on accident, because Reverie is I think phonetically the way it feels to say, and the kind of imagery the name Reverie conjures is lighter in theme, and I think Reverie, while being serious, he kind of is a lighter contrast to like what I said before. Like he brings there is a goodness in his cowboy shtick. It shows very well, like I've said before, what he could have been. We've seen contrasts, and so I think the name Reverie worked out very well and is very poetic because it shows, that there's some cowboy goodness in the world. So I honestly think Reverie worked out really well, but that might just be my bias that I like the name so much.
No, I like it too. I thought it would be like a fun like cowboy epithet name, and over time it sort of really did. Like the character really owned up to it, I think, and I really like again how the whole package sort of worked out with that. Not what I was originally planning on doing. You're gonna hear me say that a lot,
Jedediah.
but yeah, which became his father's name because I thought it would be funny.
Have you learned anything about this character you didn't know before playing him? Like, with Adia, if you've probably watched the episodes before, I didn't know anything about the whole Drescher stick when I started playing the character. But, it came about, just trying to be in the character's head and being like, oh, how do I do this? And then filling out my character decision flowchart. And I was like, oh, she would do this, and it really informed a character in a really interesting way, in a really compelling way. Did you learn anything about Reverie in the course of playing him that you didn't know or anticipate when you started?
Definitely the chains, the whole like religious aspect. I originally, and this is partially because of D&D and the stint I was in, made the character with the idea of them being a no nonsense, like I do everything based on my own skill type character, where they don't use magic and they don't have like deities backing up or anything like that. It's just a guy with his gun and he's really good with it. And Reverie was like content with that.
Kind of like, kind of an atheistic vibe to it a little bit.
Not even entirely atheistic, more just like, I'm going to prove that I can beat you all with my own skill alone. Like, I don't need that. Sort of in a way where he viewed it as a crutch. Definitely, again, like Tavarian bravado, if that makes any sense. I'm better, I guess, was his interpretation. Nah, I'd win, that sort of energy. But, like, over the course of the campaign, when he started, like, seeing himself less as just a mercenary and a cowboy, and more as, like, a member of Fixum Finis, there was a level of, I gotta step up my game, and the only thing that's been holding me back is sort of just this random ideology I made up when I was a teenager. That's dumb. And he found himself leaning towards the God of Chains, Tharizdun, because it fit well his idea of, like, hunting down demons and putting them where they belong, and Reverie's idea of being a bounty hunter, and the two just sort of clicked. I never had any plans on that happening. It just sort of, when we were passing by the altar to the god, and I was reading through the notes, I was like, I think Reverie is going to give this a whirl, and it drastically changed the character.
So just sort of this transition from just being, just fully self-reliant, but kind of admitting to himself that he sort of wanted to keep up with everybody, and that allowed him to sort of shed previous biases in a way?
More like growing up, I guess, and
Mhm.
realizing that like his idea of like personal grandeur comes at the cost of a like significant risk at his life. Like he's calling all of these benefits that he could be getting crutches, and he's like turning them down because of his own hubris.
Mm-hmm.
And that's putting him at risk. That's putting people around him at risk because like he's weakening himself. He's shooting himself in the foot. And like over time, I think he sort of grew out of that mentality and sort of matured, I guess, to the point where it's like I can accept help. I can accept this stuff. It doesn't make me any worse. It doesn't bring me down at any level. That's not how this works, basically.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense for him. And I like the way I like the way his character kind of played out. What am I trying to say here? Normally when I think of like a character arc, I think of, beginning and ends, right? I start with a problem, the arc finishes, and that problem is either resolved or I fixed a part of it and we move forward to the next section of it, or we move forward to the next problem. What I liked about Reverie was he really felt like he was on a long journey. Like he slowly changed over the course of the campaign. And, just thinking about it, like talking about the money, he used to be like very money conscious because obviously he was saving to buy his family out of slavery. But then he made that deal about halfway through the campaign where he got his family out of slavery. And for a lot of characters, having their arc solved in that way or solved in that point in the campaign, it sometimes runs the risk of what I've seen and listened to from other podcasts or sessions I've been in, it runs the risk of like kind of gutting the character in a weird way, where it's like they like lose their motivation. Like when their backstory is like, oh, I fight to save my village, and then like halfway through the campaign they save their village. A lot of times the players sit back and they go, I really don't know what to do with this character anymore. Like he solved his problem. I don't know where to progress from here. But it always felt like Reverie, he would fix the problem, he would do that, and he would always just be like, okay, what's next? And it was cool to see him move from place to place to place and become more and more integral to the party as he did so. It's cool to see that you can finish an arc and fix a problem, but not lose the character. In fact, actually make them better because they fix their problems. We think of D&D like the story ending when I fix my problem, but that doesn't always happen. You might get lucky and fix your problem early, and then you're like, well, now what do I do? But it was cool to see Reverie not have that problem.
Again, I really think it came into like leaning into sort of his second arc, I guess, his second like progression that I don't think he was fully aware of, and I don't think I was fully aware of either until a decent portion of the campaign, which is just he's raised in this culture that is so dramatically one way, and then he leaves into the rest of the world that is so obviously not. And like while he's pursuing this goal, he's like mellowing out, and he's sort of coming to terms with like the things he likes about his hometown and the things he doesn't, which sounds really simple, but like in Tavar, it's romanticized that you die in like a gunfight, like you duel until you die, like you fold them, all that fun Western stuff. But having a responsibility up to like the guild, and then later realizing I actually can save my family. This isn't just like me taking a 1 in 100 shot at it. This is an actual opportunity. Sort of made him realize I need to mature as a person, because if I keep acting the way that I am, I'm not going to be alive to care for them when I do get them out. And like that sort of changed his character arc from just I must save my family to like I kind of have to figure out what I'm doing. And that sort of played into him and the rest of the party learning about like the old stuff in the world. I don't really know a good term to say it, because like the more he uncovered about like the history of Ashes and like the people before him, the more it sort of like grounded his character, the more he realized that like he was a lot smaller in the grand picture of things, but also more capable, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm wording this really well. It's been like a 3-year arc, so summarizing it's kind of hard.
Yeah, it is difficult to kind of pack it all in one neat sentence package. But I get what you're going for, and I get the same vibes from the whole campaign, where it was just like, I think you said it really well in the beginning, that we're not, this story we've told is not the story of like the first adventurers to do this. We're a story of another round of people, that of the hundreds of thousands that have tried, but we made it, right? It was cool to take a campaign from that perspective of not just being the chosen ones. It was just, we were another group and we managed to make it, unlike so many others. But I think that's awesome. And it also plays into the future, which is that, Reverie grew up, I imagine the future of this campaign, this story. Reverie grew up idolizing, the great gunslingers of his era or something like that. And then he's like, that's what I'm going to do. It's what I'm going to grow up. It's what we all do. And just through trying to do that and doing his best and maturing as a person, he became that. Like, I don't know if it's really, I don't know if it occurs to him what he's become, truly, which is that he fulfilled his dream. Like, he got there in the end. And now the future generations will look up to him. Like, he is now the thing that people push towards. People want to be the next Red-Eye Revel. And I think that's a really cool narrative to conclude on. Because it feels less like you were one story and then it's over and there's no, put your statue up and then recede into the sand, we'll never talk about you. It feels like you made a lasting impact on the world that way.
It was a story that wasn't just limited to what I wanted to get out of my backstory. I think after a while, it was sort of, God, this is going to sound stupid, and I'm 20% joking here, but the part of it that isn't, it was kind of a story of him, becoming self-aware, if that makes any sense, and, learning more about the world, learning more about his place in it, learning about how, this isn't the first time this problem has happened, and, unlearning misinformation, and, grounding himself to sort of find his place in everything, and that was what let him, I think, take the step to become a hero, in air quotes, was finding the bits of Tavar, finding the bits of himself and his culture that he wanted to lean into, and finding the bits of it that were damaging him and growing past them, or learning to deal with them in his own way with the party.
Yeah. No, yeah, 100%. And you can see it too. I don't have time to break down every little instance of how he's changed, but it's clear to us, so clear to me how much he's changed. Do you think he realizes, in your heart of hearts as this character, do you think he realizes that he's become the hero now? Do you think he sees himself that way? Or do you think he just goes, nah, I'm still no hero? Right? Not that that's a huge burden to him, but I just it's so cool to me to think of just that little Tavarian kid getting up. It's I'm gonna be like Red-Eye Revel one day. I don't know. I wonder if Reverie knows that. Do you think he does? Do you think he is he self-aware enough to realize what through throwing off so much of Tavarian custom, he has become the Tavarian custom?
I think he does. I think it's sort of a catch-22 situation where he recognized himself as a hero and he was able to do so much with it, and then get to the point where he realized that okay, I'm a hero, but all that myth stuff and idolatry, I can now see how much of that was fake or overblown or overdone for the sake of the story. So he sees himself as a hero, but he's sort of grounded enough to know what that means. As big as the legends of him may get, oh, I heard Red-Eye Revel killed 100 people with one bullet and shit like that in 200 centuries. I think he's going to sort of remain grounded and he'll call himself a hero. He believes he's a hero, but he knows what that means.
Yeah, like finally being able to see it from that bird's eye view and not like being lost in that hype, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's really cool talking about like how like all of these characters feel like they made lasting impacts on the world. And I know we're not coming back to this setting, but it's cool to me to know that like in whatever far-fetched fantasy where we do, like it feels like we made a difference. It feels like we would come back and however many years in the future it would be, our impact could be felt that far out. And that's such a cool thing to feel. It felt like we weren't just another group of heroes lost in the storm, but we made it, we triumphed, and we really did make a difference. And that's such a cool feeling to have. Like to know that if you ever in this fantasy realm, our characters will be remembered. And I love that, man. That's so cool to me. And I think Reverie is one of those perfect examples. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I like that a lot. I think that's one of the things about Ashes that I like is like the floor is so much lower because we're living in like a lived-in world and like a world where there have been heroes before, like you said. But the ceiling is so much higher because to be remembered in a world like that, where everything is, I guess as the title says, ashes eventually, and like everything turns and everyone forgets. To be immortalized, you had to do so much. And while I'm not entirely certain we meant for this campaign to go 3 years, I think it definitely sold the idea of the like effort and the journey that it took to get there. And it made the payoff, or it's making the payoff rather, so much better.
Yeah, I'm with you that. You know, a fun fact, I have a permanent canon just because I love this setting so much. And I love these characters and campaigns, that I think for the rest of my D&D, Pathfinder 2e, TTRP career, I will always have this funny little headcanon in the back of my mind where somehow, some way, this setting like reached a like level of like reached a level of like realm hopping, and Craftworm being this like nigh immortal reincarnating individual took the Fix Symphony's crafting company multi-dimensional somehow, some way, and has managed to, like, whenever we go to a shopkeep in a different setting, I wonder where they got their merchandise, and I just go, I bet Craftworm sold that fucker something from a different dimension. Like, I'm telling you, dude, that will be permanently etched for me, and I love that so much.
Yeah, the post-credits scene where Craftworm was like, yes, I have a new business opportunity. We can reach everyone from all dimensions.
And he just like flicks the button, like 4 portals open up. I've only found 4 so far, but who knows how many.
Come, Basha, let's explore. Like,
I'm telling you, man.
I can see that. I can really see that, actually.
Absolutely. That's going to be my headcanon now. You'll be like, the Fix Symphony's crafting company lives on through dimensions. Like, hell yeah, dude.
If anyone would do it, it would be Craftworm. And I don't think anyone under him would bat an eye. It'd be like, yeah, of course he did.
Yeah. No way out of that. Taking a bit of a step back here, let's talk a little bit more larger campaign stuff. If you had to guess, and you know what? I think we've kind of answered it. So I'll say what I think our answer is, but you can correct me. When we come to the question of what do you think the campaign is about, I think the campaign, as we've discussed it thus far, is a story of heroes on top of piles. Heroes on top of the pile. Not just because they made it to the top. They triumphed. But like you said, in a world that is literally built on top of ruins on ruins on ruins, how immaterial each generation is, but they managed to rise past that and through that, and have managed to immortalize themselves despite it. They were small players like everyone else was in the beginning, but they are the story that generations afterwards will pursue because they made it. I think that feels like what the story is really about in a grander sense. What do you think?
I agree with that to extend a tad bit. This is just me being slightly pretentious, I guess. I think it's also about I guess passing the torch is the thing as well, because it's like you spend all this time becoming a hero and being immortalized and standing on the broken artifacts, the remnants of generations past. Some succeeded, some failed, and you can't really tell which. And caught up in all of this, once you finally get to the top, you realize there's no stopping this cycle. And I think that's one of the key points of Ashes is so many of the characters as the campaign winds down have made so many impacts on so many people. And we're not going to see all of the people that were affected by our characters. We're not going to see the generations that Fixum Finis and all of its pieces, all of its parts, caused to become heroes. We're not going to see the sort of ripple of the campaign.
Yeah.
But that happened. We did that. We accomplished that. It doesn't just end with us. It continues with us, and then it'll continue with whoever comes after. And that I love that level of depth in the setting a lot, because I've never really had a campaign where it feels like there's an after,
Yeah.
But with Ashes, it feels like there's an eternity after.
Yeah, literally that. It feels like there is an eternity after. There's an after credit scene. It really does feel that way. Gosh, it really does, doesn't it? Man.
So everyone get ready for Ashes 2, so 500 years in the future.
I'd have to probably chain Fen to a chair to get him to play another desert setting. But
we'd all have to track him down and go back to the dunes.
Back to the dunes. But man, it feels so cool to feel that way. To feel like this world really does live on without us, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
No, it does.
It feels less like we're closing the storybook and more like we're stepping away from another world, as cliche as that sounds. And it really does feel like in the back of my mind on that random car drive, I'll just be like, I wonder what they're doing now, man. I feel that invested and in love with this place, and it is heartbreaking to let it go.
I really feel that. It's I'll never go back to this setting. It's upsetting, and I have things that I wanted to do that I failed to do. I have things that I'm gonna think of in 3 months where it's damn, wouldn't that be great? But I really am content with the story we're telling.
No,
and,
yeah, absolutely.
Setting that we have, because this level of this emotional impact that it has on me, and I suspect it has on everyone, is so unique to the setting that brought it about. Because again, it doesn't end with us. I know I keep repeating that, but it's such an experience to be in a campaign that feels like we're only a fragment of the greater story. And I love that so much. Yeah, and I'm not talking about Reverie. I've gone wild off track again.
But I'm right there with you, man. Jeez. It's like I'm so happy we got to do it, but man, it really is heartbreaking to let it go. It really does feel that way. It's been a thing we've been doing for 3 years. Jeez, man. All right, well, we're getting morose. We're not burying the frickin' thing, but jeez, man.
This isn't a Yiddish.
It shouldn't be. No, not yet. Let's look back on some happy moments, right? What would you say is your favorite campaign moment thus far? And why is it you one-shotting the Lord of Chains?
Okay, that's really funny. I will admit. Oh god, is that my favorite campaign moment? It might be. Okay, now that you say it, it probably is. And again, I do have to apologize.
Fen worked for 2 weeks to put that encounter together for you.
Well, I also have to apologize to the people that were in my party because I spent like 30 minutes before the fight, like acting like a mom, telling them to have everything in preparation. Like, no, guys, it's not gonna work. We have to have backup scrolls, and then backup scrolls on top of backup scrolls, and then I just said the funny words and he died. But like, from a narrative perspective, I think it's fun from Reverie because like again, I keep talking about him changing as a character, but I think if Reverie had just stepped foot in the campaign, we're talking like 3 years ago, fresh out of character creation Reverie, no chance he would have done that. He would have been like, I have to shoot this guy, I have to take him and fight Mitavari and bang bang.
No,
But like,
yeah, literally that. But keep going.
yeah, but endgame Reverie has that sort of level to him where it's like, again, I've talked about this before. It's like, I have responsibilities outside of this. I don't care about the nobility of fighting you. To the Slaver King, it's like, you are another obstacle in my way. And if I have the resources to just take you out without a fight, I'm going to use them because I'm not risking my life on you. I know how much my life means now, as cliche as that is. So as like a narrative moment for the character, I think it works as like a really good like closing to his story. Because that was not a fight.
Yeah.
And I don't think he would have it any other way, which is a far cry from who he was.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that, but you're dead on right. He started out, like you said in the beginning, if he rocked into that situation the character was when this started, he wouldn't have done that. He was just a mercenary. He was just like, who's the next guy I gotta shoot? He wasn't thinking through that. It was just like I don't want to say lazy, but it was just like, what's the next move? I'm just going to rely on myself. I'm going to take the next shot, do whatever. But as he progressed,
it was instinctual.
Correct, yeah. But as he progressed through the campaign and he got over the bias of like, it's not all about this flair and this pomp and circumstance with like, the gunplay. It's about, it's about getting there in the end and the responsibilities of like who I'm protecting or who I'm fighting with or for. And because of that, he started leaning away from just being the gunslinger and he started becoming the medic. He started becoming much more of a multifaceted component of the party. He wasn't just another hired gun. He was integral. And he went from this just like he went from this like whatever mercenary to an actual like, I don't know, warrior hero. I'm not sure what the right word is, but he changed. And that final fight, which is just the result of, I'm not going to go in there guns blazing. I'm going to plan this out. I'm going to make decisions. I'm going to make sure everyone is ready. I'm going to do everything we can do to make sure this works. And then he gets there in the end, and it's because of all of that. It's because of what he's changed and how that has changed the way he approaches problems, that it solves a problem faster than guns ever could. Like, that's just, it comes full circle.
And that's why I brought up the magic earlier, was that he was so like hell-bent originally on the hellscape that like anything other than his own personal skills at crutch, he never would have done that in the early game. But like that entire boss fight, if you want to call it that, which it technically was, I mean no offense to Fen, even if I just realized it. But like that was just theirs, dude. He like all he did was invoke a god and go like, I got your bounty right here. Like, I'm cashing it in. Like, you're coming with me. That he didn't fire a bullet. He didn't, like, do any fancy tricks. That was basically just him invoking a god, which, again, I really like, because that's sort of the character going full circle from Mr. Shoot You to, I want to have an answer to this problem. And if the answer is gun, that's fine. But if the answer is calling on this old, like, occult being, that's what I'm going to do. Reverie really is just the first thing that comes to mind, and sometimes that's me, and sometimes that's him, and that is something I'll miss, is that, like you said, he's really frank. It's like, sometimes I'll think of something funny, and I'll say it, and sometimes Reverie will just say something, and it's blatantly wrong, and he'll just roll with it. Like last night with the banner, he's just like that, I love it.
Yeah. A few more questions we'll talk about, and this is less campaign, less character, and more just a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind talking about it. Brook, what's your general experience as a D&D TTRP player? Like, how long you been doing this thing?
God, how long ago was freshman year of high school? I don't want to say 7 years. But about that, oh my god, it's almost 8 years. Okay, so yeah, about 8 years. I'm a player only. I've never DM'd. At the beginning, it was sort of just like I'm late to the party. I joined people that had already been playing for a while, and I was sort of like learning the ins and outs, so I couldn't just start GMing. And sort of over time, it sort of became a problem of like backlog. Like I'm sitting here with 3 or 4 people that have their like 10th or 11th campaign, or however many prepped and like locked in like a strict order. And it doesn't really make much sense for me to plop down and like add in my first, because it's going to be janky, it's going to be clunky. And to be honest, I just kind of like playing more.
Mm-hmm. So you just started off as a player in high school, just kind of fitting in where you could, huh?
Yeah, kind of just kept with it. I mean, it started off as just like a fun hobby, you know, but like over time, I definitely got a lot more into it than I was expecting to. I can once again thank Fen for that, because he was the one who almost quite literally dragged me into it, and I appreciate that to this day.
Do you mean like he dragged you into the hobby, or you mean he dragged you into this campaign?
I mean, he heavily incentivized me to do this campaign. Honestly, I was nervous about doing D&D Pathfinder, however, when I got to college, because I sort of had this weird view of like everyone's going to be so much better than me, and my little stupid character is going to be like lackluster. And he was basically the one to tell me, shut up and just join the campaign and have fun. And I did.
Did you
And
know,
it was a lot
did
of
you
fun
know
ever
him
since.
like outside of this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're childhood friends. We've known each other for like ever.
Cool. Every time I ask these questions, I always go like, oh, that's right. These guys like aren't just all a bunch of random online people. They like that. Most of you actually like know each other in person. I'm like me and like Sarah are like the only 2 people who don't actually know people in person.
Well, that's the weird thing with me. It's like I know Fen in person, but I was also like one of the last people, I think alongside you, to be introduced to the group, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of like, not only do I only know like Fen, who's the GM, so there's some like distance there, but it's like everyone else seemed like they already knew each other and like comfortable with each other, and I was so shit scared it wasn't gonna work. I'm so glad that like I think 4 years later, almost at this point in this group, we've gotten as far as we have, and I've sort of like mellowed into the group. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I definitely, I think I've said it in comments before, but you know, this campaign running as long as it did is not only a testament to how much we're willing to commit to this thing, but how well I think we as a group managed to hit it off, and how really, really rare that is, you know, because it's how many campaigns, just like you said in the beginning, like fizzle, not because of anything like innately malice. Sometimes there is, but how many of them fizzle just because, you know, certain things don't get along and things kind of simmer beneath the surface, and we just kind of wind up going, you know what, we're just going to let this thing kind of fizzle and die rather than blowing up. But because we hit it off so well, and we got along, and we enjoy each other's company enough, it got to go as long as it did, I think is one of the biggest things about D&D that is the biggest, or just TTRPs in general, the biggest bar to entry to any campaign, which is that you have to hope everyone gets along. You have to hope everything works. And I think it's one of the rare campaigns that did.
I think part of that, I think the thing that rubs off most on me is the like creativity of this group, honestly, which I know is like a cliche thing to say when we're talking about like TTRPGs and like, which is naturally a creative space, but like with this group, it very much feels that like whatever inspires me as a player, or whatever inspires like whoever as a GM, whatever interests them, they can just go forward with it, say it, do it, and everyone else will immediately respond with, that's cool, I like that. Mm-hmm. And there's not like intensive like scrutiny, you know. It's not like we have to hold our characters up to a high bar, which I'm not saying for no reason. I've had that happen before, and it's not pretty.
Mm.
But with this, it feels more like we latch on to the good parts in this group. You know, we like focus on the good things, things that we like, the things that people enjoy. And it really does keep everything, like, I think, healthy and like moving forward and keeps everyone having fun. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, we're here to have a good time. Really, really briefly before I move to the next question, what does D&D, like, what does these games we play, what does it do for you? Like for me, it's a massive creative outlet. You know, it lets me do a bunch of stuff, and, you know, it kind of lets me scratch the acting itch that I never really fully wound up pursuing. Like, I'm a huge roleplay junkie. I'll talk about that in a bit. And, you know, I'm pursuing a career in production and stuff like that. So it's kind of it's a pretty easy through line to be like, I like to create content, and this is a way of, you know, creating, you know, bringing things to life, which is what really gets me going. But I mean, like, what does D&D do for you? What itch does it satisfy?
I think similarly with a creative wow, I cannot speak. Jesus. Creative outlets. But like, I've also always just really enjoyed systems, I guess, like games where I can really get into a system and like master them and like express, I suppose, like my take on it and like what I've been able to take from it. And D&D and especially Pathfinder do that really well. And it just merges so well into the like creative, as you said, acting bit of like character production, where I can like make a build, or I can find a mechanic, or I can find some like piece of the system that interests me, and I can make a character that is emboldened by it, and I can just present it and I can roll with it. And that sort of back and forth between like understanding mechanics and like getting into the system and like having a creative outlet and making a character and making a person based off my own interests or based off the interests of the GM, those two things meshing together are such a unique experience, and it's really what I'm here for. And also seeing what everyone else is doing, like what answers everyone else comes up with, like how everyone else expresses those two things together. It's a lot of fun. And it never ceases to amaze me what people are able to come up with. Like, this is getting gushy, but y'all are great. Some of these things I never could have thought of, and I love how it's been executed.
Yeah, and kudos and right back at you. Biggest pet peeve as a player, right? I think, like, for me, I am a huge, like, as you can probably tell, I'm a big fan. I'm a big button pusher player. And that's not because I want to be like the asshole who it's like, here's the obviously cursed object, and like, I want to grab it and just fuck over everything. But just more in the sense that I have a very, I'm very much aware of how much time we dedicate every single week to do this. So, like, if it's like if we're role playing like a decision and a discussion, I'm happy to let those moments play out and be as slow or as dramatic as they need to be. But like a lot of the times, you know, D&D can, and I keep saying D&D as if it's a catch-all. TTRPGs in general, a lot of times they can devolve into sort of 5 people at a table just kind of debating at each other, not like maliciously, but it's just like we're going to do a plan and we want to make this plan perfect, but we just sort of go back and forth and we wind up spending 30 minutes out of character discussing a plan. And as much as I can appreciate that, I'm also like, we're here for 4 hours and there are other things I'd like to continue moving forward. So at a certain point when analysis paralysis really starts to set in for me, I'm like, you know what, at this point, I'm just going to press the button and see what happens, because I want to keep the story moving. I want to get as much I want to squeeze every ounce of fun juice out of this as we can. So I wind up being very impatient, very much go. And that is something I personally need to work on, but I'm curious what you think.
But I don't know if this counts as a pet peeve. This is probably a really bad answer, and I'm gonna apologize, but I was gonna say it eventually. To probably D&D, to be honest, as like a system. Like I love where it got me. I love the people it let me meet. I love like a lot about it, don't get me wrong, but like as a system, there's just so many so many characters I've tried to make, so many ideas I've tried to express, so many like interactions I've wanted to have that the system has just like crossed its arms, shook its head, and said, "Nope, you can't do that." And it's like, why can I not do that? Like going back to Reverie, like why can I not make a non-magic martial that does healing? Like I have a medicine kit. What's it for then? Like what? Why can't I do that? And like I feel like at the very beginning when I was learning how to like mix TTRPGs and character creations together, the system really helped me because it had like a few like sort of preset
Yeah,
ideas.
it had some nice
sort of in its mind.
guardrails to it to kind of lead you
Yeah,
in a direction.
but like now that I want to like sort of lean more towards my own creativity, I'm almost more leaning into like the Call of Cthulhu direction, which is all the way on the other end of
Mhm.
the spectrum of sort of just you make up your own like skills and you make up your own slots and you roll what you will. It sort of started to like recently get on my nerve. I still have fun with it as a system, don't get me wrong, but I've sort of reached like a threshold.
So to make sure I've quote unquote written this down right, your biggest TTRPG pet peeve is D&D.
Is D&D as a system? Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think
That's probably rude. I don't dislike like playing it. I don't hate playing it. I don't like dislike people who run it. Like I don't want to say anything like that.
Mhm.
It's just I've learned how deep I can dig into D&D to like not even break the game. I definitely don't want to say that because never my intent is to metagame and like break the game, but just to combine pieces together and like make an interesting character that like is in my head or like express some unique thing. And it just pushes against me so much. Like I don't know, maybe it's a me thing. Maybe it's I've been playing it way too long though, and I recognize that I'm very biased, but like
no,
yeah, it kind of is.
I think you're hitting on a sentiment I have kind of come to with Dungeons and Dragons as a system. I think, I think culturally, and you could blame, I think honestly, Stranger Things for this. D&D has definitely kind of hit the zeitgeist with many people as just being like the umbrella term should be TTRPGs because there's many of them and they do many things, but that umbrella term has kind of just become D&D. So when you say I play tabletop role playing, people just say, "Oh, you play D&D," and I do that same thing myself. I say D&D like a catch-all.
I've been saying that like within the past hour.
Yeah,
like I do that too.
Exactly, but I think it's what a lot of people and what I've had the chance to realize and learn over the course of playing D&D of, I came into college, had never done any of this, and I started with D&D, and I think that is the right move. If you are out there looking to start playing these games, and I highly recommend you do, start with D&D.
Absolutely.
D&D is the perfect starter thing. And I don't want to say starter as though like you're going to grow out of this, because in most chances you won't. I think the answer is, for most people, like in the 0 to 100 that encapsulates every need and desire and potential outcome of every tabletop role-playing scenario in game, D&D is a system that can apply to and do very, very well, if not perfectly, a good, I'd say 60 to 70% of what people want. It can accomplish so much and is very robust, but there's a 30% where when you really want to dive more into build crafting and there's a level of combat you want to be more into and you want to rely and take the guardrails off a little bit more, that 30% is where D&D starts to fail and where D&D starts to run up against its own problems as a system. And that's where Pathfinder and a bunch of other systems come into play. So it's an awesome system and it's still great to play. And for the most part, it will get you there. It does the job it needs to do. It's like everyone goes into the dealership and they're like, I don't want the 60%, I want the 30% and the souped up car and all this stuff. And what are you going to do with it? Oh, you're just going to drive it to work. Then you could just get a regular car. You'd be fine. Like, D&D is an excellent system, but it has flaws. And for the 30% of us who run up against those flaws, other systems are really great to fill the gap. And I think we as a party are a group that has run aground of D&D just over the course of the way we play the game.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to make it seem, because I know I've bitched about it enough, so I'm probably coming across very negative. And again, I agree. Like, it's a good foundational system, and like you said, I don't mean that in a like your bad way. Even
Yeah,
it's just
these are
like,
not this is not
really
training
good
wheels.
when you're new.
This is not training wheels.
Yeah,
This is a full
And
bike.
there's depth to the system. There are things you can do in that system that are incredibly like interesting, and there's a lot of like finding two pieces that you didn't think would connect and putting them together. I mean, the multi-class system is ridiculously good for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sometimes you're going to hit a brick wall, and sometimes there's not really a way around it. And I guess I'll leave it there because I don't want to start jumping into like specifics. It's just for like the 60 to 70% of people, D&D is going to be a perfectly fine system. You're probably gonna, you're definitely gonna homebrew. You're definitely gonna homebrew it. Yeah. Everyone has to homebrew D&D a little bit, but like it's a working system. But if you're part of that like 30%, it falls off hard and fast. And that's me being pretentious.
Yeah, no, but I think I agree with you, and I think the point is well made. Last question. Why do you love TTRPGs? Like, what makes this hobby, and I think calling it a hobby is fair. I mean, if you dedicated 4 hours a week to anything, I think it's fair to call it a hobby. What makes this so... Why do you love it? What makes this hobby so amazing to you?
I really just love the, like, how everything works together. Like, you have, in the end of the day, you're a guy, you're a person. You come up with your own, like, little creative piece that something has inspired you to make, or you're interested in making, or you're spending like hours and hours a week, Jesus, I can't speak, making, and you're putting it together with everybody else's piece, and you're just sitting there seeing how they'll react, and like seeing how they'll bounce off each other, seeing how everybody's individual creativity and style and aesthetic is going to feed into it and create something completely new. And like, you add or drop any player of any party, and the end result is going to be so dramatically different. It's like so heavily a communal game, like communal storytelling, I think is the best way of putting it. Because between not only the story, but also the like mechanics and like the party dynamics and all that stuff, everybody is different, and everybody is going to express it differently. And that merging of different ideas, for lack of better words, I wouldn't give that up for anything, really. Like, I just love it. I love the way that my little piece can, like, inspire others, and I can get inspired, and we just have this cycle of making a better and better thing as time goes on. And each improving each other, and each being improved by each other, I guess. If that makes any sense. That was sort of long and snappy.
Yeah, but it was good. I think it was right. Well, Brook, I want to say thank you so much for joining me. I know I wish I could have gotten on this sooner, but I'm glad we got a chance to finally talk about this character, and I know we're just about nearing the end of it, but, you know, I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it finally. So thanks for coming on.
I am too. I appreciate any chance to yap about TTRPGs. I've been playing them for a long time for a reason. They're a lot of fun. And Reverie is a very fun character, so
damn right.
Always fun to talk.
Well, I think that's just about it. I'd like to say once again thank you to Brook for coming on and for taking the shot in the dark with me. You know, it's not easy to get on microphone and talk to somebody that's, you know, you still haven't seen face to face, but I think we've come a long way. And I want to say thank you to listeners for watching. It means the world. subscribe. I don't know. I should probably start saying that now. And just want to say I hope you have a wonderful next session. Woo!